Hello. Okay, Totally Killer, a black comedy slasher that's currently streaming on Amazon. It was released on Friday here in the UK. The story follows Jamie, who, after her mother's friends are murdered by the Sweet 16 killer on Halloween, travels back in time to 1987, where she pairs up with her mother to stop the young would-be killer and return to her timeline before she is trapped in the past forever. And as you can probably guess from the synopsis, this movie is a blend of Back to the Future and Scream. It's a blend of sci-fi and horror, and the vibe of the movie is very 80s B-movie slasher. It has that vibe to it with a bonkers premise, which I found to be very interesting, and it's very aware of itself, which helped ease me into this experience. And the way in which it's aware of itself, the way in which the film at times acknowledges this awareness, I thought was quite smart. There's this one moment where they acknowledge the special effects and sort of how those special effects looked in that moment, and I just found it to be quite smart and clever. You know, at first, the way this movie looked, I thought, was a bit jarring. I wasn't a massive fan of it. It's kind of lit like a daytime TV soap opera or like a kids TV show that you would find in the morning on Saturday on ITV. It had that kind of look and feel to it. And that was also reflected in the writing. Like, the writing I felt was snappy. It did what it was supposed to do. You know, it was very simple. It moves the story along quite effectively. But there was nothing really that incredibly sophisticated or smart about the writing. But again, it's all those different elements, even from the way in which the film is shot with a camera, which I found, to be quite sort of simple in terms of how they use the camera for the film. And it's all those aspects that I've just mentioned with the writing, the lighting, and just how they use the camera for this film that kind of made me realise that this film knows what it is. The filmmakers, the writers, the director, they knew what film they were making. And it's that realization that helped ease me into this experience. Whether it was intentional is another question. I mean, I don't know. That was just one of the sort of the big question marks. I watched this with another person. The other person that I watched this with wasn't particularly liking the overall look and feel of the film, but sort of my kind of how I looked at it, my perspective was I felt like it was intentional, but I don't know, it's just how it came across to me personally. When it comes to the slasher horror aspect of this film, I felt like it was pretty effective. They had impact. Those moments with the killer doing his thing, stabbing the teenage girls, and those death scenes within those moments were very effective and had impact. They're very brutal, they're very gruesome, they're very gory, and I was quite surprised because they kind of stood out among all these other elements within the film. And I'm going to use the comedy aspect as an example. Like, the humour within this film is quite juvenile, it's quite childish, so when you get those moments with the killer, they ended up being, those moments just ended up coming across a lot more striking as a result. And I was a bit surprised because I'm going to go back to the lighting aspect. Because of the way this film is lit, it does suck out a lot of the atmosphere, suspense and horror out of the overall movie. You know, it doesn't really inject an awful lot of atmosphere into this film, and this is a horror as well as a sci-fi film. So again, I was quite surprised that those moments with the killer were as striking as they were. But I do think it's because of that sharp contrast between when you get those moments and those other elements, whether it be the very juvenile horror and just that kind of general look of the film. Maybe it was almost like I was watching a Disney cartoon with brutal, gory, bloody deaths within it. Like Bambi was just being stabbed to death. That's the only way I could describe it. When it comes to the comedy aspect of this movie, it's very hit and miss. There are times in which it works, and then there's times that it doesn't, that it just falls completely flat. A lot of the time the humour I felt was quite juvenile. So it was very inconsistent when it came to sort of the comedy aspect of this film. And other than just stick 80s music on, I felt like they could have done a better job at really immersing us into this different era. I felt like they could have just had a little bit more fun with recreating the 80s era, and that kind of sums up my overall feeling of the movie. Like, I really like a lot of the ideas and what they're trying to do with the film, but ultimately it just kind of lacked any real oomph. Other than those kind of moments with the killer, I just felt like this overall experience felt kind of flat. Like, the ideas are there, but how those ideas are implemented and how the film plays out just felt kind of bland and flat, which is weird because this is a bonkers premise. You know, the premise of this film and the idea behind this film, you know, this sci-fi horror blend of time travel and all of that, you know, this should have been completely fucking bonkers and just out there. But it ended up ultimately feeling very kind of flat. And when it comes to the performances, even the performances really kind of lean into the style and type of movie that this is. You know, that very kind of bonkers premise with the time travel and the blend of horror. And again, it kind of worked. The performances kind of worked for what we were watching, for what I felt the filmmakers were aiming for. But it was still nothing really special. I liked the characters, but I never really cared for them either. And then the same with the writing. I mean, the writing is pretty snappy, like I previously mentioned. It does the job, and it does make that time travel element very easy to follow. But it's not quite as smart, I felt, as it could have been. And it's like, this overall experience felt like a Goosebumps early morning kids TV show version of Back to the Future. But I did enjoy this movie. I did have fun with it. Now, yeah, there are different levels of enjoyment, and I wouldn't say my level of enjoyment was extremely high, but because the movie does such a good job at taking you along on the ride, I just really did end up enjoying it. And like I said, it wasn't, you know, this wasn't the most enjoyable thing I've watched all year, but it was fun, and it's because it acknowledged what this film was. They knew what it was they were making. My biggest problem was what this could have been, what this movie, the potential that this movie had. And I think that was my biggest frustration with this was I liked a lot of its ideas and what they were doing, and I thought like some of the stuff they did when it came to acknowledging that kind of awareness of what it was they were making, I found to be quite smart. But overall, it just kind of really lacked impact. It was fun, it was enjoyable, but it was nothing majorly special, and that kind of just sums up my overall experience with Totally Killer. It's not a film that I'm going to immediately go back to watch. You know, I didn't enjoy it that much. It has fun, bonkers, you know, wacky ideas, but I feel it never really truly unlocks the potential of those ideas and what this film could have been. It all just somewhat felt a little flat and devoid of any soul. Like, I liked the characters, but I couldn't emotionally connect to them. I didn't love the characters. I didn't really care that much for them, but I liked them. I liked how they were being brought to life by the cast. And even down to the way in which this movie is shot. You know, the imagination is there within the ideas, but the imagination that's behind those ideas and what that's within this story, it never really truly comes alive. And so it's almost like, yeah, that sort of sums up my overall experience with the film. It never really truly comes alive. But just for casual viewing, I mean, it was entertaining. It was entertaining. So yeah, and there are a couple of moments that did make me chuckle. So yeah, this is another frustrating experience for me because this could have been something special. Unfortunately, as I just said, it never truly comes alive. But it's worth checking out. So yeah, they are my thoughts on Totally Killer, and I will be giving Totally Killer a 5.5 out of 10. So yeah, What did you guys think? Let me know below. Did you hate it? Did you love it? Did you agree or disagree with anything I've said? Let me know below and let's get a discussion going. And if you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. If you want to see future reviews from just some random Welsh geek rambling on, then please hit that subscribe button. It will mean an awful lot to me. My next review will be for some other hood. I'm going to check that out tomorrow, so that'll be my next review. It will be up by Sunday evening, the latest. And yeah, I want to say a big thank you to all those that have subscribed to my channel recently. I really do appreciate it. I'm currently sat at 177 subscribers. I'm aiming to hit 200 by the end of the year. And so yeah, every time someone subscribes and interacts with my channel, it means so much, because for me this is just me, I am just a random geek in Wales sitting here expressing my love for film. So the fact that there are people out there who do take some enjoyment watching me and just sort of listening to my thoughts and feelings, it just means an awful lot. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I'll be catching you guys soon.